Hello everyone and happy Tuesday. This week is Habitat Week and it's one of my favorite years of the week just because I get to talk about habitats and climate change and all of the things that I get really fired up about. Pun not intended. So most of us know that with the increase in population, a lot of habitats are being destroyed, but a lot of natural disasters right now too, between the wildfires and the hurricanes and the earthquakes, are also destroying natural habitat because 70% of our earth is water, and that water is also polluted because of us. So that greatly impacts the food chain in those habitats, but also the survival and longevity of the species in that water, the rest of the water. So 31% of our land mass, not counting water, is forests, and a very large part of our forests are habitats for animals. And I did a video, I think it was last week or the week before, that in Canada, I think it was 70 to 80% of our species for a country lives in the forest. So just as an example, but our animals need those forests, and when we cut them down for things like to build a new neighborhood of homes or to use the wood to sell and make other things, Canada makes a lot of money from lumber because we have a lot of forests compared to a lot of other countries, because the majority of our population is in the southern half of Canada, and the northern half has a lot of trees that people want to log because it's a lucrative business. So, since 1970, and for some of us that is beyond our lifespan, our planet has lost 60% of its vertebrate species, which, when you think about it, that's a very large proportion of species that many of us will never see or hear about or meet or anything like that. Usually the only time we hear about these species is if we go to a museum or doing a research project for school or something, and it gets recommended to us that we can look into these species. Habitat degradation is the number one cause of the 60% loss, and it's also half of the species threat currently facing our planet. This is mostly from construction, both residential and business. Because our population is expanding, we see having houses for them as more houses for the people as more important than maintaining the habitat and the oxygen generating trees that we need to protect us from global warming. Overexploitation is the number two cause, with 55% of the fish threat being relegated to overexploitation. So because people need to eat, and we've been raised thinking that, meat is a luxury and it's a status symbol if you eat meat regularly. It used to just be on Sundays. And I've talked to people who in their households, they used to only eat meat on Sundays, especially red meat. Red meat was the most expensive. So that was a status symbol for a lot of people, but it's become so ingrained in our diet that most people can't even comprehend a life without meat. And I have to say, I have managed to persuade a couple of people to watch some documentaries, and they have therefore decided that they don't want to consume dairy or red meat. They're still on the white meat and the fish, but red meat and dairy are two of the really, really bad ones. Moving on to specifics for habitat degradation. The Amazon is about 40%. It wasn't that high not that long ago. It was only about 30%. However, a lot of it has been from logging. After the Amazon is supposed to be protected, and then they decided that it was more worth it to take down football fields of trees to make money than it is to protect the planet. 87% of wetlands. A large part of these are now residential areas or business parks or things like that. Even in my town here, we used to have cornfields on this side that's now neighborhoods and neighborhoods of houses. And on this side, we used to have kind of like swampy area past Main Street, and now it's giant business parks. And 50% of shallow water coral. So a lot of you know that global warming has greatly impacted the health of the coral, and even the Great Barrier Reef has pretty much mostly died off. They're trying to bring it back, but with COVID, some scientists and biologists are trying to regenerate the coral, because right now the pollution is a lot lower and the people wanting to visit the Great Reef is a lot lower, so they can protect it in that way. 80% of the terrestrial species in the world live in the forest. So when we continuously cut them down to build new houses, new towns, expand things, build new businesses, big sky rises, things like that, these terrestrial species have nowhere to go. And this is why a large majority of our species are going extinct or are endangered. Speaking of endangered, our good friends, the pollinators, they are endangered because they need flowers and plants to pollinate. And when we cut everything down, they don't have anywhere to go. But also, the massive use of pesticide poisons them, and a large populations of them die off. Yet we still farm them for things like honey. However, the crop production industry ranges from $235 billion to $577 billion. So that entire industry will disappear if we do not have pollinators, because that is how, populations vary, which protects them from things like enormous weather events. It makes them more, It makes them better able to defend themselves against external pathogens, predators, that kind of thing. So we need pollinators, and a lot of people are raising money to help protect the bees. And I know there's a couple of I don't even know what it's called, the celebrities that have decided to turn their enormous properties into bee farms and protect the bees that way. We need more bees. And while this is a whole other conversation, understand that we will have a food shortage if we cannot save the bees. And if we don't start prioritizing these things, we're going to lose a lot more than our food. On a brighter note, that's all I have to say for Habitat Week, at least. I know that there are a lot of other things going on right now. People usually aren't thinking about these types of things, but always something to keep in the back of your mind. Just don't get too sucked in and think that it is the end of the world, because it'll get really dark really quickly. But just think about little things that you can do to help. For example, like making a video like this, where you just remind people of some statistics and the relation between them and how we're choosing to live. But I hope you have a fabulous rest of your week, and I will see you later this week for a video on Instagram Live.